Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, and welcome everyone to the Gower AONB Partnership Steering Group. The first item on our agenda is apologies for absence.
Apologies from Councillor Andrew Stevens and from Paul Tucker.
And Paul, okay, thank you. So the next item then is item 2, is there any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests? Are there any?
Apart from last item.
Sorry?
Apart from last item.
Yeah. As regards the last item,
Last
to take
item,
it,
yeah.
members will have to declare that the non-councillor members.
Yep.
But we'll deal with that at the time.
Yeah, we can put the form out, can we? And
okay. Yeah.
Okay. So item 3 then is the minutes of the previous meeting to approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the previous meeting, which you'll find starting on page 1 and 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. If somebody move them as a true record, please.
Yes.
I will. Yes, you like.
Thank you.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So, okay, well, item 4 then is the presentation on improving community and visitor resources at Port Tynan. Who's handling this, Jeremy?
Perhaps I can start with it.
Oh, please, yeah.
If I can introduce Niall Maxwell and Will Judge from Rural Office for Architecture. I think at the last partnership meeting, which was towards the end of November, Niall and Will had literally just started their commission. I think they were about a couple of weeks in, and this is all in relation to proposals at Port Tynan, looking at the public and the visitor and facilities down there, following on from the feasibility study that was done by the Borough Partnership in 2018-2019. The AONB Partnership through the Sustainable Development Fund have supported the with a grant, supported the commission that Will and Niall are now on for us. We move on now. If I can now pass over to Niall and Will to go through, tell us what the work they've been doing to date.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Right, thank you very much. And we'll now hopefully see a presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for inviting us. I'm going to just find my screen. Please bear with me. Can everybody see a presentation being expanded?
Yes.
Good. Correct answer.
Not yet. I haven't seen it yet. Thank God.
Can you see that?
Yes.
No. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I'll go as quickly as I can, but at the same time, I appreciate that everybody's got different connectivity issues. So it may be that the slides are sometimes delayed. As Chris has said, we were commissioned at the back end of last year to develop community facilities in Port Tynan. This has obviously been a fairly difficult COVID period of consultation, which we're sort of in the thick of at the moment. So I'll just to give you some explanation, we are the pink area, which is predominantly the car park and the surrounding public environs, is the area in which we're working. And these facilities would be looking to replace or upgrade the existing toilet facilities that exist on the site, but also to work alongside complementing and supporting both existing community facilities and commercial assets that exist. So they're obviously just colour coded on that page. And what's happened over time is that we started when we were appointed at tender in the autumn with a specific brief, and that has been sort of reviewed and broken down into 4 areas for ease of consultation as much as management of the brief exercise. So it's community, tourism, commercial, and travel and transport. And each of those sections allows us to either engage with particular stakeholders or deal with particular needs on the site, specific to the site. This will become evident in the slides that I'm going to show you shortly. But the brief is developing, and at this presentation, it's fair to say that we're still in the soup of trying to resolve that with the various stakeholders that make up the steering committee and whom they represent. So these 4 strands provide us with community, which is a range of facilities, anything from R&I storage through to rowing club storage and boat club facilities, all the way through to sort of play facilities for the younger generations of the village. And that's complemented by a tourism offer which provides showers and toilets and changing facilities, and enhanced changing facilities for all of those with accessible needs, all the way again through to sort of more seasonal activity space and improved access to the beach. And then thirdly, the commercial is probably the area which has got the most challenges in terms of to reach consensus as to what additional facilities can the village support, whether that be a restaurant or brasserie, a coffee shop or cafe, or a small concession, or serviced accommodation. And then surrounding all of that is the other additional headaches of travel and transport, getting in and out of the village, as well as servicing the needs of the peak demand in the summer against the very fallow demand in the winter, as this village expands and contracts to accommodate the varying tourism seasonal needs. In terms of our programme of work, we are where the red arrow points. We're sort of obviously in the middle of March, heading towards Easter. We've just had before this call our second steering committee, and the intention is this week we will be fixing the brief and then moving into a fairly rapid period of design development to arrive at a scheme by the end of April, early May, before reporting out. This has meant that we've been going through stages of consultation, and we have another public consultation process on Wednesday. As I mentioned at the top of this, it's been tricky with COVID, but we're finding ways of communicating and finding ways of ensuring that we reach the majority of the stakeholders and communities that are needing to be consulted. So back to this slide, because it's important for you to understand that the extents of the area that we're working need to be set aside against the environmental and ecological needs of the site. Obviously, we're working within a site of importance for natural conservation as well as being a triple SI. And we're acutely aware of the way in which the built environment can impact on the enjoyment, but also the sustainability of this landscape. So we're sort of treading this very fine line between getting that balance between the environment and any future development that supports commercial or tourist activity. And what we've identified are a set of key moves, and those key moves are really helping to narrow down where we make proposals for the development, but also to start to tidy up a number of the headaches that exist on the site. So to briefly help you understand this, number one is rerouting traffic. So we're getting it away from the beachfront and starting to bring it into the site earlier, to then manage the parking arrangements so it's a lot less cluttered and chaotic and becomes very orderly, but also that we can start to pedestrianize the lane that brings you down to the seafront. And that also then starts to look at developing commercial and community facilities along that lane, which then starts to sort of become the center of the village. And then outside of that are a number of ancillary moves, some to do with boating and slipway access, to do with overspill parking, as well as obviously a more enhanced beachfront access from the current point of arrival. And each of those in turn, I won't go into detail on these, but each of those in turn, we're trying to express at this stage the qualities we're trying to achieve, not just to tarmac over the land that's there, but find environmentally sustainable ways of bringing people to the site, but also keeping them out on the site, whether that be arriving by some form of park and ride, or if you are coming in private vehicle, allowing there to be a minimal amount of parking that supports the year-round offer with an overspill that is a more greened, environmentally friendly way of solving that problem. And then secondly, looking at the way in which this route towards the beach becomes much more of a public realm and enhances the offer that the village has for tourism as well as for its own community, whilst then also looking ecologically at how to sensitively develop the approach to the beach, bearing in mind the nature of the dunes, but also the nature of the way in which the sand is continually shifting. And then looking at development that is of a scale that is commensurate to the village, supporting the community and the commercial activity that exists within the village, but at the same time complementing that with maybe an enhanced tourism offer, and the extent of what that might be becomes evident further into the slide presentation. And then also providing play and activity, both for local community, but also for the seasonal activity that then engulfs the village for the 2 to 3 months of the summer season, and really starting to see that as a destination in itself, but in a location that is safe and close to the amenities that are being proposed. So we return to this as the sort of the guide to help us, but actually when we start to look at the brief, we've had a lot of feedback from the village, some of it incredibly positive, a lot of it challenging and quite anxious about what this future development may mean. So we're capturing that at the moment, and this process is ongoing and will conclude, we hope, at the end of this week after our further consultations online on Wednesday. And we're also starting to sort of word cloud these to understand the value that's been placed by all of this feedback on the types of facilities and balance of community versus commercial development. So what we're doing at this stage is communicating within the steering group and to yourselves, and then obviously to the community, the incremental growth of the brief, so that we are addressing the needs of the community, but also the desires and ambitions of some local members and some other interested parties and stakeholders as to what the potential for Porthynnon could be. So on one hand, we have really just replacing the existing facilities that are there and making sure that there is enough community space to be utilised by the village, moving all the way through to enhanced tourism offers, all the way through to sort of larger scale commercial development, including both food and beverage and catered or self-catering accommodation. So to communicate that, we have these fixed number of moves that we've just described to you, which this is what they start to look like when you start plotting them out in real world terms. You've got obviously an access at the top of the village where my cursor is, bringing you into an organized structural parking area, which is obviously putting the priority on accessible parking at the frontage, but also bringing a link into this pedestrianised public realm, which is supported by commercial and community activity, a balance of the needs of local clubs and members, all the way through to the potential for community commercial facilities that could support other commercial ventures within the village. And this sits alongside existing uses, for example, the park that's used by the boat club for bringing boats in and out of the village, as well as obviously starting to look at how this public realm can really be landscaped in a very different way than it is now, to become a much more pleasurable experience as you move towards the waterfront. When we then zoom in and start to look at these options that I described earlier, the first option is really just replacing the existing toilet block and starting to look at the facilities in terms of a small concession that might be complementing the retail that exists here, a community space, some storage and facilities for the RNLI, which obviously are replacing what exists at the moment, as well as replacement WCs and accessible WC, which sit alongside this route from the car park, and then also sit alongside the potential for an extensive area of play. If we develop that as another option, we start to look at another block of accommodation that could be further up the lane, which starts to support other groups that are maybe needing accommodation, for example, rowing club and other community activities, as well as looking at the potential for serviced accommodation, which may be a way of funding the community facilities. We expand that further and we start to look at a food and beverage concession that may exist on the beach frontage, again complementing the different styles of food offer that exist within the village, but also working alongside a retail concession that may be sitting adjacent to it. And then further still, adding maybe another layer of accommodation on top of that, so it becomes two-storey, enhancing the food and beverage offer, so there becomes more of a restaurant offer on the first floor with a larger balcony, and some serviced accommodation that's connected to this concession, whilst also retaining the facilities at the back as previously described. And then to top that out as option 5 is to then add a further block of self-catering accommodation to the rear block, making that also two-storey in extension. So it's very important for you to understand this is not an architectural proposal at this stage. This is to communicate to the varying stakeholders the extents of a brief and the range of opportunities that are available within the set of constraints that I've already described. This is the best way to summarize it, really, from upgrading the facilities at option 1 to starting to improve the overall facilities for the community with option 2, to starting to include a little bit of commercial amenity space and public facilities in number 3, before moving up the gears to sort of much more tourism-led commercial development. When we look at that on the site, if you're looking from the beach towards the existing retail that exists at the moment, this is where people are turning and parking. This becomes a very different type of landscape, which would be developed further through our proposals. But the building is of a relatively modest scale, fitting in terms of its scale within the context of the village, but also starting to reflect the character of the region. If we expand that, obviously the next block in option 2 starts to move further up the lane, providing additional community facilities, whilst at the rear providing serviced accommodation. The third option then starts to provide food and beverage along the street frontage at the beach, before then turning into a larger scale development as this two-storey structure with service units, before finally adding further self-catering units at the rear further along the street. Again, this scale is still commensurate with the scale of the housing that exists in this part of the village, but it is obviously significantly more impacting in terms of the built environment and your experience of your visit to the beach, whether it be as a local or somebody coming on holiday. But this is important that we balance this against the way in which the Village Hall were also looking at proposals for the village. And this was back in 2017, a building proposal which they had funded to see whether they could provide their new community hall with a community cafe and other facilities at ground level. And this was just to demonstrate for your own benefit to understand the scale of that development in the context of the village, and also in the context of what we're trying to describe to you at the moment. So to conclude, we are looking at creating obviously a vision of a fully integrated solution for Tynon, but something that is sensitive to its context, something that's sensitive in scale and balances the need of the natural ecological environment with a form of sustainable building and sustainable placemaking, so that it's supporting both a community that is there 12 months of the year and those that are there for maybe 12 days or a month during the summer. And the issue for us at the moment is we are still navigating that rather difficult journey between very opposite views in terms of what is an appropriate development. And we're hoping that this week we will conclude that process, which will allow us to move forward with a particular proposal within the next month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Niall. Are you happy to take questions?
Of course, I'm happy to take
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. Thank you. All right, any hands up there? Can't see any hands up.
Well,
Gordon?
Oh, got your hand up, Gordon?
Yep, Gordon.
Right, oh, fire away. Thank you, Gordon.
I'm sorry, I missed the name of the presenter. My name's Gordon Howe. You are?
I'm Niall Maxwell.
Niall Maxwell. Could you just confirm whether my colleague, Thomas Methuen Campbell, was put into your, as a consultee? Has he been involved?
Sorry, are you were representing?
Gower Society.
No, we didn't include him in the steering committee, but we have already had responses from you in terms of the prior to us starting the work when we started the consultation process.
No, it was agreed that he would be our contact for the Gower Society.
Right.
Because he runs a car park in Oxwich, and his family owned the whole of that land in any case initially, and we thought he'd be the perfect choice as far as we were concerned to put our 5 pence in.
Okay, well, the process that we've been through is we've obviously built a steering committee that is trying to be representative of the various different groups, and we obviously took advice on that from Swansea Council to try and get the right balance, but at the same time not to make it so onerously large that we couldn't manage the process of consultation. But secondly, we are obviously going through this process of public consultation to ensure that all stakeholders are given an equal share in the conversation.
Okay.
Process, can I just conclude, Gordon, please?
Sorry.
The process of the steering committee is actually to disseminate rather than just solely to consult on proposals, because given the COVID environment, it's incredibly difficult for us to get onto site and to host what we would normally be doing in terms of public consultation. And that's had to be really rethought over the winter months.
It would help us, and me in particular, and probably others, to can you just give us a resume of the kind of people that you're involved with down in Port Einan, who you're negotiating with?
That varies, obviously, because what we're dealing with is a mixture of the village as a village community. So we're obviously consulting with the village hall, and we have representation on the committee for that. We have representation from council level in terms of tourism and commercial development, and we have local members sitting on that. So it's actually quite a lively group in terms of the balance of opinion. And then we're also then going through separate consultation with various stakeholders. So that can be independently with RNLI or with local member groups like the Rowing Club. And that actually helps us to disseminate the information that we're producing and to share that with the broadest group of stakeholders that we can reach.
I was more thinking about the commercial aspects, the people who are involved in commercial activity there now, the pub, the shops opposite, the cafes, and indeed the surrounding caravan site owners. Are they all actively engaged?
No, that process we're going through at the moment. Chris, would you like to come in at this point? Because it might help to just clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. I had trouble raising my hand. Yeah, I mean, as Gordon, as far as your representatives concerned, Thomas Methuen Campbell, is down on the stakeholder list as the representative for Gower Society.
Okay.
When it comes to the steering group, Niall mentioned we have representatives from the Port Einan Community Council, the Village Hall Committee, and some of the local interest groups like the Rowing Club. Niall, I think you mentioned the events that we got on Wednesday about in getting the stakeholders an opportunity to look at the proposals as far as they have got at the moment. with.
I think, sorry, Chris, I think really that I'm asking questions which the other groups should be asking. So I'm going to back off because it's obviously too detailed for it and it's going to take far too much time. Just one final thing, folks. How many cars are you catering for? I just did a quick count as far as I could go on my screen. You've only got 126 cars there, and where are the buses turning around?
Yeah, the strategy for the parking is an interesting one actually, because there is a kind of different measure. At the beginning of this, we were given data which suggested a particular need of the parking level, and then a separate calculation. Will, could I bring you in here just to qualify that? That might be helpful.
Yeah. Originally, as part of a commercial assessment, sorry, can you hear me? I apologize.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's fine.
Originally, as part of a commercial assessment, we took the time band ticketing for parking that had been provided by Swansea Council. So there's roughly currently at Port Island around about 370 parking spaces, but that hasn't been calculated or confirmed. However, there's only about 158 tickets issued each day during the summer on average. So when it comes to tracking parking space numbers, the parking space numbers that have been accommodated so far within our quite early schematics are roughly between 158 to 372.
And that's broken into two areas. So just to qualify that, Gordon, the middle block in the middle is of a certain amount of accommodation for parking based on the year-round needs, with overspill parking provided to the left of the site, which provides for peak demand, but obviously doesn't therefore become a permanent feature within the landscape. So
thank you.
And then secondly, about the bus turning, that's all been reviewed with highways at the moment.
I don't want to be rediscovering the wheel, so I will point out that there were 1,600 cars at Rosilly during the peak times this last year. Just bear that in mind.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? I can't see any hands.
It's me.
Oh, sorry. Carry on. Thank you.
But two questions. The first was, who actually owns the land? I'd always presumed Swansea Council owned it, but I've just had my doubts.
Chris?
Yes, it is. The area is council ownership.
It is council ownership. And the other.
Sorry, could I just add to that? Sorry, I just thought it was only fair for Chris to respond to that. There is a strip of land on the adjacency that is in alternative ownership, but it doesn't affect the proposals. So when we started the commission, we looked at all of the title deeds to understand those risks, and we've been working around the fact that it's mainly local authority land that forms this part of the development.
Right. And the other point is, I couldn't tell from the plans because my screen's too small. Is there still access for disabled to get down to the seafront? Because a lot of people just like to go and sit and watch the sea, and they drive down and sit in their cars.
That's a very good point. There's not parking in the location that currently exists at Port Island. It's been pulled away from the frontage to allow that public realm to be more accessible. But the intention of the proposals which we're yet to develop in that area would be to assist those who are less able to have a generous amenity before they arrive at the beach. But that would be accessed by either using the means in which they transport themselves, rather than actually bringing cars to the frontage, because that was the key part of this exercise, to try and remove vehicular traffic from the public realm in order to enhance the value of that space.
Right. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please. Yeah, I just can't see any hands up. That's why I keep asking.
Okay, sorry. Can I speak to Niall, please? Niall, what I wanted to ask, if I may, sorry, my name is Jill Burgess and I'm here on behalf of the Gower Society. Could you tell me what the brief is for the steering group, insofar as depending what the questions being asked of that grouping, what then you would take away as being the brief as to best out of 1, 2 or 3 plan. Could I just ask you what the brief was for the steering group?
That's a really interesting question. I suppose it's the hot topic, because
Yes.
what we're finding at the moment is that we tendered for work on a particular brief, and that brief was developed based on the original feasibility study that was completed in 2018. And then what's become evident through the various stakeholder consultations is that obviously there's a range of opinions as to what should be supported as development within Porthynnon.
Yeah.
So hence why we've got this kind of balance between community and commercial. Some local members appear to be in favour of seeing significant development in Porthynnon, whereas there is a resistance to that from members and local groups within the community. Our role is to understand how to navigate through those different groups, and that representation is on the steering committee to allow us to have a range of voices. So some are resistant to change, others are welcome to change. And what we've concluded at the end of today's steering committee was that as we are appointed by Swansea Council, it is for them to instruct us as to what they want us to be developing from these proposals.
That's very clear, but it's absolutely the issue insofar as the people that were not involved in the 2018 analysis, then if they are not engaged in the current analysis, would feel that it hadn't been actually open for public discussion. I think that's always a difficulty, isn't it?
I couldn't agree more, and I think we are very sensitive to that, and hence why hopefully Wednesday will allow those voices to be heard. We've had a huge amount of written feedback from the community already, so it's not as if people aren't aware of these proposals. I think the challenge has been that normally we would be in the village hall meeting and greeting and discussing things,
of course,
and it makes it very difficult in this format to do that.
Yes,
as best as we try.
Yes.
But I think we will have covered all bases by the end of this week.
Yes, and from the point of view of the report, I see your difficulty, but from the people who feel not aggrieved, but that their voice is being suppressed, this type of Zoom meeting doesn't lend itself for discussion, does it?
It doesn't, no.
No.
To sum that up, I can't actually find you on my screen, by the way, so I'm sort of just talking to a voice.
I was going to say, I haven't got a picture, I've just got a photograph of you. So,
yeah, that might be.
Thank you very much. Thank
you.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Anyone else, please shout.
Yeah, Paul, I think Steve Hurd is.
Oh, right, okay. Steve?
Hello, Paul. I've got a bit of a difficult situation here, really. I was born in the village and I've lived in and around the area all my life. I represent the Porthynnon Community Council on the steering group. I'm afraid to say, speaking for residents, and quite more than a few residents have actually come to see me, there is a great concern about the level of commercialism that's actually happening and the level of change that is suggested. In the wintertime, there are very few residents who actually live in the village. It's majority sent over to holiday lets. There is also an issue with traffic, as we're all aware. Porthynnon is a huge pinch point. I can remember back in the 70s when I used to live above the village, the cars were actually queuing past our house, and I was over a mile away from the village to get in there. There is not enough parking in the village. You cannot create enough parking in the village. A park and ride system, really, I think you can find very hard to address. I don't really understand quite how you're actually going to deal with the traffic, to be perfectly frank with you, particularly if you're making it a destination.
Yeah, and I think that was also, hence why it became one of the key criteria of the evaluation of the brief. When we started to receive the feedback, we were obviously both looking at a situation that exists already and how can we enhance that and improve it, irrespective of any development. So even before we'd started to look at the accommodation requirements for the brief, we'd been focusing on these site moves that I've described to you as a means of trying to understand how to enhance a situation that is already problematic. And not being from the Gower and only visiting there for our site inspections, what became really evident, and obviously this is anecdotal, was the number of parking signs, private parking signs dotted around the village, resisting obviously this problem. So we are aware of that, and I think this is why this consultation process is important, because it allows us to get a better understanding of different people's opinions, but also at the same time to balance those against the threats that exist on the site, of which you pointed to the biggest one, which is how to actually deal with that seasonal spike where it is really problematic. Chris, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, before you go on any further, because there is also concern about the level of commercialism that's actually proposed here.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the stakeholders are commercial people within the village or in the outskirts of the village. And I'm afraid to say the residents are not happy about it. The other thing that doesn't seem to be addressed is that during the last consultation, only Portainen was actually included in a consultation process. Well, Portainen is quite a key village. The Portainen Community Council alone extends to Nelston and comes out to Margam, which is on towards Rossilly, and it encompasses all of Overton and Skirlage. There was no consultation to these people who are part of the community. Putting in a pedestrian system from where you're suggesting it, great, sounds lovely. There's already issues now with disabled people, as you've just discussed. That many other types of people use this. Horse riders, for argument's sake, will go down onto the beach and have the right to do so. Have you put in any sort of access for them? I'll be quite frank with you, there are a lot of concerns about this development, and a lot of resistance is certainly coming over. Whilst I accept the fact that we do need to change, it's the level of change it's putting in. And on a personal basis, I'm also concerned about the level of change that could happen in other villages in Gower should this go ahead. Because it won't be very long before places like Rossilly, Caswell, wherever else you'd like to go, will want the similar sort of facilities. We're going to lose Gower as it actually is.
Steve, could I jump in there just to support what Niall was saying? I think the key thing at the minute is that I think a lot of the site moves that Niall has described around the car parking and pedestrianisation, that those are the brief that we gave Niall was very open at the start of it, and they've taken on board a lot of those issues and have tried to look at the village as a whole and try and work out what the best solutions would be for the village as a whole. So the proposals that I think everybody's reasonably comfortable with is around how we can sort out the parking issues, how we can sort out how the buses drop on, drop off, and avoiding some of the issues that were raised at the feasibility study stage around pedestrian interactions with two-way traffic down the street. Now, Niall's not going to be able to solve the issue about the peak numbers of cars and other transport coming down to the village. It's not really in his scope to be able to help us with that. But I know the council in general are concerned about that for Portainen and for other pinch points. Rossilly, Gordon mentioned earlier. But the key thing at the minute is that spectrum that Niall showed about the level of commercial development is the issue that we have to try and give Niall a steer on in terms of what the most appropriate extent is. So if you look at the left-hand side of the spectrum, where really it's just about upgrading the toilets and the basic facilities there, that is one option. Obviously, that doesn't really help us in terms of improving Portinen as a village, whether that's for visitors or community, and we're still left in a position where we're having to look for revenue to maintain that site, whereas on at the other end of the extreme, where we're talking serviced holiday accommodation, etc., there's more chance of revenue being able to be reinvested into the site to improve its management. And the question at the minute is, well, where is the best balance? And that's what we're trying to grapple with at the moment.
Chris, could I ask you then, what is the main issue? Is it lack of revenue? Is that what you're trying to say? Maybe I've got the wrong end of the stick. If this is a revenue generating process, well, to be frank with you, I think that would be even less popular.
I think the issue at the minute is, everybody agrees that the current condition of the facilities down there is not acceptable and it needs to change. Well, for that change to happen, you have to have investment in that and some sort of way of paying for its upkeep.
It's interesting because if this sort of thing was going on in Swansea, I would say that investment would be available. It's actually going on in Gower. It doesn't appear to be available. If you look at all the investments gone into the city centre, I think for many years, I'm afraid to say the council haven't taken Gower as a point of priority. And it's a shame. It's also a shame now that we've got to go to this level of commercialism to achieve that level of investment. Because one thing is surely, if this goes ahead, it will completely change Portinen.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any other hands up?
Yeah, Councillor Mark Child.
Oh, Mark. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Niall, for the presentation. I mean, it seems to be moving on steadily despite COVID, the scheme and the ideas. I was wondering whether there would be any delay or any extension to try and get any face-to-face meetings with various people who might be interested in giving their opinion because of us coming out of COVID or because of the COVID delay. I was also wondering what consultation there had been with people who visit Portinen, not members of the communities or running business, but holiday makers who come to Portinen or Gower more generally, and what is it they are looking for when they come to a location like Portinen, because that should be taken into account as well, I think. I think the scale of the development is clearly something which is out there for debate. I will say that all the development, or virtually all the development that's taken place in the city centre, has been commercially backed investment. And so commercially backed investment might escalate what happens in Portinen, I guess. The debate is whether that is the best thing for Portinen, clearly. But most of us, when we go on holiday, one of the things we like is to sit by the sea and have a meal. And there was definitely a commercial appeal to that restaurant at the front. There is no doubt about that. Other sites in Gower and elsewhere we know have made success of a seafront location. And in my mind, that extends the hours of the day where Portinen Port Island is attractive. It's not just when the sun's out in the daytime. There's an evening offer there as well, and it might well extend the duration of the offer in Port Island, because sitting inside looking out to sea, you don't have to worry too much about what the weather is like outside as well. So maybe there's be more employment, more activity, more going on in Port Island for a longer period of the year as well with that commercial development. So I would say that there is a positive to an element of commercial development. It's just the scale of it, whether it's all going to be 2 floors and that sort of thing. A couple of things you mentioned. You mentioned a park and ride. I don't know whether that had serious considerations. Clearly, should the car park be full, or as an alternative to paying for a car park at the bottom of the hill, you have a free car park at the top of the hill and a bus down. Has that been considered in any way? Is that a viable option?
Yeah.
Or is that just an idea that's been floated? The other thing was the accommodation, the possible accommodation. Would that be a commercial venture, or would that feed into the community, some kind of community coffers in some way, and run by the community? Or are those options up for debate? And the last point, sorry, Niall, is the access to the beach. The access to the beach now is absolutely dire, and almost anything you did there would be an improvement. But I would like to see that being, that could be a major attraction, a major feature, without being detrimental to anybody. I don't know if you're inspired by the dunes or the sea location or whatever. I mean, obviously, catering for disabled, catering for horses, or whatever, would you need that? But that space from the square, the seafront down to the beach has massive possibilities for improvement, and I would welcome that if nothing else happened.
Thanks.
You get it on. I can't get it.
Quite a few points just to sort of
Get a new one.
if I could do those in order, Mark.
Password into that. I don't know the password. I don't know messages.
Roger, I think it is. So to start with, on the consultation front, we are obviously desperate to meet with the community. The intention is that the proposals that we do come up with, we will host an event in the village hall, and that will be managed in whatever the COVID environment is at the given point in time. But we're already in delay on this project, so we have to be accepting of the fact that the funding is available for a certain period of time for us to do our work, and therefore we're trying to sort of juggle that with Chris and Jamie at Swansea. In terms of tourists and people who obviously use Port Island and whether they've been consulted, the answer is no, they haven't, but there was consultation with the 2018 report, which we've obviously used to understand the background to this exercise. In relation to the park and ride, we have looked at other examples of park and rides that exist in similarly constrained villages. There are a number around. Invariably, they're run as a community venture, so they do involve, and there is an expectation on the village community to be galvanised and have the energy and resources to deliver that. And they're not straightforward to set up. But it was mooted and discussed both with our conversations with Highways as well as obviously the steering committee as to are there ways of alleviating the problems that have been flagged on this call as they were on this morning's call with that. So that's still work in progress. I think also it's fair to understand that a lot of these things are sort of almost outside the remit of what we've been asked to look at, but we're identifying them as part of this process. So a little bit like your explanation of the beach frontage and the access to the beach, that probably will come with a set of recommendations for what needs to happen next rather than be solved within this process. So we'll just be visioning those aspects outside of the remits of sort of the building and the similar environs. And then in terms of the commercial development, it's a balance really, because it depends who you're talking to and it depends who's voicing an opinion about what they think is appropriate. So on this call, we've had exactly the same responses as we had this morning and have had all along, both from people feeling things that are appropriate and inappropriate and aspirational and less aspirational in terms of what development should be supported. But when we've looked at the commercial reality, clearly if you had catered accommodation or self-catering accommodation, change over day would have to be managed by somebody who was delivering the similar service within the village. So therefore, does it become a community stakeholder? Does it become a separate commercial venture that's tendered? Or is there some third way in which an organisation is set up to support the village and for the profits to go into the village coffers? And those are all kind of conversations that will come out of this process rather than be solved during the process. I hope that answers the range of questions.
Thank you, Niall.
And thank you, Mark. Anyone else who has a hand up?
Yeah, Chairman, John France.
All right, John.
I've taken my hand down, actually. The last set of questions and answers dealt with the point I was making. I wouldn't say that I think I have friends in Port Island. I go there fairly often. And their big complaint as permanent residents, they live there all the time, is the occasional boom day in July and August. And the council could issue, as it does in other places, temporary parking permissions for fields at the top of the hill. It's quite common in Cornwall, for example, to have to walk quite a way, comparable distance. And I think with a little flexibility from the council on permits, it could go some way to modifying the impact of traffic on the village, which is the big thing that people seem to complain about quite reasonably. I wouldn't like to be living on the main street there on the worst days. So that isn't precisely your brief, but it's an integral part of it, as I think Mark has pointed out.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else?
Roger Button, Chairman.
Roger?
I'm rather concerned about the pinch point on the corner by the church with the buses. There are hold-ups there, hour and a half in the summer. A large vehicle comes down and nothing will go back, nothing go up the hill, causes major problems there. And also in Russili last year, 400 cars an hour coming into Russili. They were queuing through the village. The buses gave up going in there in the end because of the delay. And last weekend before, there were cars parking in Russili. The bus had to reverse a mile up the road to turn round because there was nowhere else. Something to bear in mind.
Thank you, and it's interesting that we've had similar feedback on earlier consultation, so it's good to have that reinforced. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Any other hands up? No. No. Last call. Okay. All right then. Well, thank you very much for that, Niall, and brief, good, excellent presentation. And I know you've been working hard on this for quite a while, and we look forward to your reports. And let's look forward to what comes out of your report. And thank you.
Thanks very much.
No, it's all right. Excellent.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to item 5, which is Chris, is your update on parking at Kevin Bryn?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So you see the paper there. You know, it's fairly self-explanatory, I think. See the just turn to it myself. So the physical works have now finished on the site. You know, the picture I show there is actually probably the least extent of the works that you can see, because there is a bund of along the roadside on either side of that pull-in now, which has been the bulk of the physical works. I've been up to inspect the site myself, and I've had discussions with Steve Hurd and others about stones that are up there. So, certainly some of them there, I'm able to move myself. They rock very easily on the ground. So we are looking into moving some of those around to make it a bit more of a robust area, to make sure that people can't drag them away and then get onto the rest of the common. We've also had some feedback about could that area be extended slightly. So in that particular picture provided in the papers, I think we'd probably be looking at maybe drawing some of those rocks that are in the foreground towards the viewer, just to make that area a little bit larger. I think inevitably there are going to be people with differing views about whether it's big enough, whether it's should be bigger. We're not going to be able to please everybody, but I think the point about having the stones in that particular area is that it is a solution that we can tinker about with at relatively little expense, because it's easy enough to get somebody up, a contractor up there with a digger to move around the stones, make sure it's doing what we were hoping it would do. The other thing to mention with this is that the traffic regulation order mentioned in the report there, so that would be creating a clear way across the common from the outskirts of Reynoldston village down through to Killabean, which would make it an enforceable offence to park on the road in such a way as to cause an obstruction, and that legal process is now in hand through our highways department. I'm happy to take any questions.
Just unmute. Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? No? No hands up. Thank you, Chris. Good to see progress there, and hopefully, well, it will solve the problem, I reckon. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 6 then, is the progress report on sustainable landscapes and sustainable places programme. Anything to add to your report there, Chris?
Thanks, Paul. No further update on that. We're hoping to have a list of projects formalised and agreed with Welsh Government, working through the National Designated Landscapes Partnership. So that should be meeting to discuss all the proposals from all the AONBs and national parks in Wales, with a view to having those projects funded in the next financial year. So, some of the projects I listed there either of relevant to what we've been talking about this morning about Portynen, further work in Clyne Valley Country Park, because there is a lot for us to do in there. Thank you.
Right, unmuted. Any questions for Chris? Any comments? No.
Sorry, could I ask a question, please, Chairman?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Paxton, carry on, yeah.
Just a quick question there in terms of what you've got about nature recovery and grazing management, I should say, on Fairwood. What exactly are we talking about, Chris? Is that work with Sean?
Yes, working with Sean Brackenbury. Really, we're looking to encourage more and better grazing on Fairwood, but also making it safer for the livestock, so it will actually encourage commoners to turn their animals out onto the common.
Obviously, in terms of road safety at the moment, the signs have gone up. across Gower. I'm pleased to see that, I must say, and I think we're grateful for for the funding for that came through. So certainly I'll just say that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because obviously that common is rapidly ceasing to be the common as we understood 30, 40 years ago, to be honest.
And it is the one common, yeah, the one principal common that the council own.
City Council owns, yes. Okay, thank you.
Chairman, Fairwood Common.
John?
Fairwood Common, at the moment, I would have thought the principal problem is that the drainage across it is acutely bad. I walk crisscross it most weeks, if not most days, and the drainage is bad in the driest of summers, but at the moment it's, you know, you need wellies and indeed swimming things really to get across it. And it would be enormously improved if there was a limited amount of money put into drainage. Is there any prospect of that?
It's Hamish here. I don't think there's any prospect of encouraging drainage on the common, because in effect we want water to be held on the commons, not to speed up the catchments and increase flooding downstream, and to reduce low flow in the summer. So essentially one of the benefits of well-managed commons is that they act as a sponge at the headwaters of our catchments. So it's not something that we would normally encourage the commoners or the landowners to do. There might be a problem with some of the rights of way. I can see that, but certainly everywhere on common land that we're working, we're trying to reduce runoff rather than increase it. I don't know if that's any help, but
if, as stated, you want animals, drainage is then becomes quite a serious question.
Not necessarily. I think there are many. We're working quite hard with the council and with other people on managing livestock on the common, and we've got quite some interesting projects that I'd like to report to this group at some point in a future meeting, to do with stock management. One of drainage isn't necessarily one of the problems. One of the biggest issue is roadkill, TB, farm. You know, the price of animals that you get when you've kept them on the common all year round and you're going to sell them. There's a whole range of issues involved, but we're not normally asked to do anything about drainage with respect to livestock management there.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, carry on. Yeah. Linda? Yeah.
No, I can see more hands up. It's not mine.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to ask a question, if I may, of Hamish. Is there in the case of drainage, what about in some areas they planted out a different bedding, basically, which absorbs drainage in order to dry out an area, which doesn't then make it go down to the other areas as drain off, if you know what I mean, but it's down to the planting.
Well, what we try and do, rather than plant anything on the common, we try and manage the vegetation to achieve what you know, the best possible biodiversity in the particular location. So in certain circumstances, when you overgraze a common and it's more of a bowling green than a diverse sort of vegetation, you will get more runoff. Sometimes when it scrubs up, you might lose some moisture through things like willow. But on the whole, what we try and do is manage the vegetation that is there. There's been quite a lot of work to cut scrub, rank gorse, and Molinia on the common this year. So I don't think that we would expect to be planting on it.
Linda?
No, I've got my hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Mike has, Chairman.
Yeah, sorry, because I can't see anything here. Mike.
I was just going to say, John, that maybe if I have a word with you, we can highlight which rights of way are an issue with flooding, and I will speak then to rights of way and to Hamish, and we'll see what we can do in terms of improving their usability.
That would be very good. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, right. So unless anyone else needs to speak, just no. Okay, great. Thank you. Shall we move on into item 7? Is to update from Chris on the AONB management plan. Anything to add there, Chris?
Well, really, I'm hoping for some views from the committee about how you want to take the management plan work forward. So, you know, it has been in abeyance for for the past year. You know, principally around the difficulties we've had around COVID. Also, you're having to cope with the other work that took priority. So this is my attempt to try and re-establish progress with the management plan now. I put forward a proposed timetable there. We did have a subgroup who the memberships listed there. It's a case of what are your views on that? Do you want to continue with the steering group? What's the best way of proceeding? Really, I'd really like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Members, any thoughts?
It certainly looks to me, Chairman, as though you've got quite a strong group there, Mr. Midland, steering group.
Yeah. So as I say, I mean, yes, I'd be quite happy to stay on the group and hopefully we can all get together and move it forward. Got Mike? Good. No.
Thank you. Well, sorry, Linda.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, is there any reason why we can't take it forward using Teams?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
No, I don't think so. It was just a case of obviously the last time the group met was over a year ago. So if the members of that group are happy to carry on and continue off, basically from where we left off, I'll work forward on that basis.
Well, I'd be happy to.
Yeah,
I think that seems a sensible suggestion as well, Chairman.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And as you said, there's a pretty strong group there that to progress this now, and I don't see why we just, as Linda said, can set up meetings via Teams and get on with it. Yeah. What do other people think?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I agree, Chairman.
Sorry.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah. So we do that then. Yeah. Everyone in favour? Can I see? Yeah. No one against? Any abstentions? No? Okay.
No, in agreement.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, very well then. We'll do that, and I look forward to the group working again together. All right, thank you. And then item 8 is the dark sky monitoring report. Again, it's been presented by prepared by Chris again. Out to add to that, Chris?
You're probably all sick and tired of listening to me now. So this is a monitoring exercise we do every year. We've now got data since Dark Sky Wales gave us our first survey back at the end of 2017, I think it was. just to emphasise how good the dark night sky is on Gower. So you've got the results there, and really we keep up that monitoring exercise because we're still we still have the ambition to become a dark sky community and make the application through the International Dark Sky Association. But we're not able to progress that until we have the revised Gower AONB design guide in place and adopted as supplementary planning guidance with the section on lighting. We're not until the consultation on that is done and the revised guide is in place, as it were. That is still pending.
May I speak to you, please, Chris?
Hi, Jill.
Hi there. Can I just tell everybody that I represent the Gower Society on the Dark Skies project. I was hoping that the SPG had been adopted and therefore this project can go forward. To think that we've sat on it since 2017 is a travesty, because it's the best introduction to tourism for the area. And we really, apart from asking people who have got bright lights to tone them down, we've already got it ready made. So can you tell me why is it that we're not getting on with the adoption of the SPG? Please.
Yeah, as far as the supplementary planning guidance is concerned, it has to go through the proper process. When originally the supplementary planning guidance we had for lighting in Gower was separate to the design guide.
Right. It was separate.
It was separate, but
and now it's not.
Well, what we want to do is make sure it is brought into the full Gower AONB design guide as a specific section of that, so it's all together in one place. And the consultation on that, I think perhaps hopefully Paul Mellor can help me out in a moment on this, but the consultation exercise on that was, I think, over the summer last year, and there was quite a lot of comments and feedback on that that is still ongoing. Paul, can you add anything to that, please?
Paul.
Yeah, certainly. The Gower AONB design guide is a refresh. It had to be refreshed following adoption of the local development plan, which didn't happen until 2019. It was one of a number of supplementary planning guidance documents that went out to consultation last year. There were, I think we've reported back on it at a previous meeting of this group, in that there were generally favourable response to the document, but there were some further changes that require a rewriting part, and that needs to go back out to consultation. So yes, it's scheduled to go back out fairly shortly, and we'll hopefully have it in place by the time of the summer.
Sorry, Paul. I only work on diary dates. Can you give me a time scale, please, so that I can put it in my diary? Because I just think that 2017 and the amount of money that the Gower Society put forward, I must say, match funding with Swansea City Council, yes. But I envisaged that we wouldn't now be still waiting on a decision for the adoption. And I'd like to have some sort of timeline, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think obviously we looked to push it forward earlier, but they wanted an up-to-date policy context in place, as I say, until that LDP was adopted, and then the further review, we couldn't take it further forward. It's not it's the strategic planning team that are taking the document forward. So
can you tell me who is it who's sitting on it, please? Which member?
Nobody's sitting on it. There's a redraft is being worked up. There's officers working on it, and they've been working on it for some time. You know, I haven't got the exact timeline for you, but we can.
Okay, so if I'd like to find out,
Come in one voice, please.
Could I ask an update on who that is sitting with? Who is it that is responsible for that rewriting, please?
So it's with the strategic planning team.
And who is the person who is the chair of that?
The team leader,
yes,
is Tom Evans.
Tom Evans. So it's sitting with Tom Evans to get it approved and altered, and then the dark skies will be part of that. Is that what you're saying?
That's the process. You know, once we have an adopted document, then we can apply for the dark sky status.
Okay, but you do see, of course, in this context of why we're sitting on this meeting, the need to take something which is such a wonderful idea, and we've already got it. And in times of where we're looking for alternatives, that would be a wonderful alternative for us in Gower. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. So, another member wish to speak?
Councillor Mark Child, Chairman.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Mark?
Yes, I mean, I do share to a degree Jill's sort of frustration that this has taken the time it is, but that doesn't mean that in the meantime we can't be encouraging and getting the message out and supporting action that reduces the brightness of the skies in Gower. And I don't know whether we're simply waiting till we've got the policy before anybody does anything, or other processes in place that increase the darkness of the sky, and that will carry on after we get the status as well.
I'll ring you back. Okay.
Yeah, can I come in there, please, Paul?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. When we're not waiting on the designation before we're doing anything. Certainly, I'm working very closely with our highways lighting department about what things we need to put in place when it comes to the replacement of street lighting. So, for example, they've already got a position in place where they have the specifically for Gower and the AONB, bearing in mind the dark skies, they will put in lighting units of a particular kind when they do their upgrades to street lighting to make sure it's dark sky compliant, and that's quite a different approach from what happens elsewhere in the city. So there are measures in place, and it's not that we're just waiting on the designation. It will be great to have it when we have it, but there are still things that we are doing and would be expected to do. Once we've got the designation. The whole point about the designation is that you have an improvement plan, and you need to work towards that and report on that every year.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak? No? No? Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Chris. And the next item is the Sdf Fund. Is the last for information. That's let me just find that. That's page 17. That's for our information. Mike, was there anything to add, or you just happy to present?
Just give you a quick summary.
Cheers.
Yeah, the SDF budget for this year, 2021, was £100,000, which we have fully spent through 19 different projects. We've had more projects than usual, 8 withdrawn this year, and 2 that have had to reschedule their programs over the year as a result of COVID-19, but we did achieve full spend, and we've just had verbal confirmation at the moment from Welsh Government that the budget for next year, 2021 to 2022, will be £100,000 again. We haven't had that confirmed in writing. We're still waiting for that. But we've got a number of projects, 8 at the time being, running. We're about halfway committed, and we've got a number of applications in at the moment. So that's all looking very good for later on. If anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to try and answer those.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone want to ask Mike any questions? No? Are you sure?
Please don't feel you have to.
You don't have to. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for that, Mike. And the final item is item 10, and that's the election of non-councillor steering group members, which Jeremy will lead us through in a minute. But can I first ask those who have an interest in that to leave the meeting?
And if I can explain as well, Chairman, I will send the interest forms around to everybody concerned, if they can complete them and send it back to me. So all the non-councillor members will have to leave.
If it would, please. And we'll see you on the 5th of July.
Okay, Steve, Barbara and Roger. So we should have the councillors. So it's Mark, Paxton, Linda, John is here. Yeah, and Hamish. Is Hamish still here? Has Hamish left?
Must have.
Oh, we wanted Hamish. We need Hamish because we went down.
Can we?
Oh.
Can I give him?
Contact him?
I have requested him to join to get back in. I did contact him before the meeting. I thought he understood.
Yeah.
But,
can he? Got his phone number or something? Yeah.
I've contacted him now. Hamish, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I left by mistake.
Right.
You won't be worried then.
Okay, I can see Barbara still there, but she's frozen. Like she's on my screen, but I think she's left.
All right.
I think so. Basically, you see the recommendation is just to extend the term because the annual meeting is due in July. We don't know where we're going to be. It'll be very difficult to have an election on Teams. So we had legal advice and proposal just to extend the term of office for a year, and we can decide on everything then next year, which will fall in line with the local government elections as well. So if you're all happy with that, just as per recommendation in the report.
Right. Any Paxton, good hand up?
I'm happy with that, Chairman.
Yeah. Anyone else? Mark?
I'm quite happy.
Linda?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Hamish, okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Okay. Comments, yeah.
There we are.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that the job done?
That's the job done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Ta-ra.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye.
Ta-ra.
Thank you all.